Hello, welcome to the new episode of Talk Turkey. After a long summer holiday, we're back.
Hello, Nevşin. Yes, we are back with a new episode following the summer break. And we'll talk about a Turkish pop star today. Our viewers may wonder why. Unfortunately, everything is politicized in Turkey nowadays, and even pop stars have clear political positions. Gülşen is not the only one. Some are like Gülşen in opposition, like Tarkan, and there are also some others in pro-government camp too. But could you please summarize the Gülşen case for our viewers? What happened and why do we talk about it today?
Exactly. It's sometimes really hard to explain what's happening in Turkey because it's sometimes like it's so confusing and sometimes so absurd. This is one of those cases. So this is Gülşen. She's a singer, famous Turkish singer. She's like, in a sense, I think it was Reuters or some American outlet. They said Turkish Madonna for her. But I'd rather say maybe Turkish Lady Gaga because she has these like grotesque outfits in her shows and programs most of the time. Actually, she's just like, pop singer and her music is not that good, to be honest. But lately she became some sort of political figure because she has this stance defending LGBT rights. She's using this rainbow flag in her shows. And also she's reacting to violence against women. She's making like some sort of political statements through her Instagram and also on her shows. So this carried her to the opposition camp in a sense, because the government now, they're following a policy like in Europe, also in the United States, far right is against LGBTQ and feminism, so AK Party falls in that category now. And so like Gülşen all of a sudden became a political figure. So apparently last April in one of her programs, it's a private program actually, like in a bar, somewhere like this, she's singing, having her little concert, and she's making a joke. So apparently in her team, there's a guy whose nickname is Imam, right? Because he studied in Imam Hatip schools, one of the religious schools in Turkey. So she's making a joke about him, towards him. She's just saying, well, so we asked this to Imam, Imam is a little pervert because he graduated from this Imam Hatip school, that's why, and people are laughing. So this video somehow leaks or like somebody carries that on social media, but that was last April, I'm reminding again. So people started sharing this on Twitter, and there are some known accounts, known to be pro-government accounts. They started sharing the video and condemning Gülşen because she's basically insulting Imam Hatip alumni and religious people and religion. So there was a how should I say, there was a backlash towards Gülşen on social media from conservative circles. And all of a sudden, I mean, this happens everywhere, like right? I mean, some sort of cancel culture, you could call it. But what the difference in Turkey is, all of a sudden, there was an indictment against Gülşen. And she was taken into custody by the police, taken first to the police station and then to the court. And the court arrested her. So just because she made this joke. And she stayed in prison for 2-3 days. Then she appeared in court again. And the court ruled for house arrest. And she's still in the house arrest. And the state attorney prepared the affidavit. And they are demanding her imprisonment to 1 year to 3 years. From 1 year to 3 years. They're demanding her imprisonment for insulting religion and also, how shall I translate this? Maybe insulting group of people. So that is the case. Obviously, that's very absurd. There's also backlash against this court case in Turkey. A lot of people who are in the opposition are reacting to this, and we are trying to understand what's going on.
Well, there is certainly an immense reaction from different parts of the society. Actually, when she was arrested, even some pro-government journalists criticized it. So that's quite unique in that sense. It is certainly a matter of freedom of expression, because I mean, there is a difference between making an inappropriate joke and hate speech or incitement to hatred. Is the joke funny? No, it's not funny. It's not meaningful. However, making a bad joke cannot be illegal. That's the point. Moreover, this has been taken totally out of the context. So, I mean, it's after several months. You said that it was in April. It was recorded during the concert. And I believe that there are several issues connected to this. First of all, understanding of freedom of expression in Turkey is very problematic. And we should probably discuss this later in the video. And secondly, there are double standards in terms of freedom of expression in Turkey. If you are a pro-government figure, you can say a lot about others, and there is a protective shield. Nothing would happen to you. You can make 100 times stronger statements or jokes without any consequences. So for one part of the society, there is unlimited freedom of speech. For them, Turkey is even better than Norway or Sweden nowadays. But then for the rest of the society, when they speak out, there are consequences. The third issue is, even if your jokes and statements get a lot of reaction, if you are in opposition, the mechanism wouldn't work the same way. Things would not advance so quickly, or it wouldn't advance at all. And certainly you wouldn't be arrested the next day for sure. And fourth issue connected to this, this was a joke, but this is more than just about a joke. And we know it very well. It's not about Gülşen or her joke, but it's more about what she represents. She has been receiving a lot of criticism from ultra-conservative circles because of where she stands, because of the way she dresses up and all. She's an independent, strong woman with liberal worldview. One may like or not her songs. Personally, I don't, but it doesn't matter. But she has a clear stance in terms of women's rights, as you say, LGBT rights, environment. And this has been bothering ultra-conservatives for a long time. That's why many in Turkey believe that this is more about punishing what she represents rather than what actually happened and about the joke. That's why it has also attracted a lot of attention in Turkey, and that's why we are talking about this. I think we should also discuss, what does this say about the political climate in Turkey nowadays? Would you like to say maybe a few words about it?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, first of all, some laws in Turkey, some clauses are actually very similar to European countries, because, you know, during this accession process and this and that, Turkey made a lot of reformations. However, like, what's written on the paper is important. I understand that, but then how it's implemented is rather more important. So since the judiciary is under the heavy influence of the government, basically, they take the clause from some European country, but how they implement is very, very political from the judicial point of view. And the state attorney of this case is actually a very significant figure. This guy, Kuntan something, I'll tell you his name, a very, very young, Türkşat Kuntan Uçuk is his name, the state attorney. He's now renowned because he was only graduated in 2018. And so actually, if you're like a new graduate, it's not really usual for you to, as a state attorney, to come to Turkey and work for one of the biggest courts in Turkey. So apparently this is like a very political figure, apparently, this state attorney. He just did a very little term in Osmaniye, in a smaller city. Then it comes to Istanbul with an exclusive decision taken by the judicial process. So this tells you something, like, this is a selected state attorney. There are such figures. We know some selected judges, some selected state attorneys. Like, if such cases usually goes to them, and they give the heaviest sentences. That's how it rolls, basically, you know. So there are these renowned figures, and this young state attorney is one of them. So he's covering such cases all the time. While this time, what the opposition did, for example, I mean, the political climate in Turkey is like the opposition, since the elections are becoming nearer and nearer, the opposition is trying to get as many votes as possible from AK Party side. And they don't want to basically push conservative voters. So what they did, the opposition politicians, they were like, well, her joke was not okay, but she shouldn't be in prison. You know, so we did not hear a strong voice from the opposition side against this.
I mean, from the political parties, you mean, right? I mean,
political
when we say
parties.
opposition,
Actually,
it's broader. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Political parties, they were timid, they didn't say anything in the beginning, but then there was a backlash from the public. And even some AK Party figures, like, you know, AK Party journalists and this and that, they started kind of questioning this. They started saying, well, that's a little bit too much, isn't it? So actually, this public backlash sort of pushed the opposition a little bit. So it's not the opposition reacting to such absurdities in Turkey right now, but the public. I mean, from my perception, from my point of view, actually, usually the public opinion is more liberal or more familiar and more demanding towards liberal values than the opposition.
And more courageous, maybe. I mean, they're maybe just shy Democrats.
Exactly. And it's not only Gülşen lately, you know, usually there are a lot of festivals in Turkey during the summer season. You know, most of the municipalities in the Aegean region, Western Turkey, Southern Turkey, there are concerts, there are festivals. And all of a sudden, we're seeing some court cases banning such festivals. Well, using excuses like, well, disturbing the public, causing too much environmental damage, some sort of, with like such absurd rulings. A lot of festivals have been canceled this summer also. So for a lot of people, it's really up to here. I mean, Turkish people are going through a huge economic crisis anyways. We just had this week a huge price increase in electricity and natural gas. And the purchasing power of Turkish people really diminished compared to like 2 years ago. And so basically people are poorer and everything is being banned. People are called to court for what they're tweeting, or for a joke, they put you in a prison. So it's become a little too much.
But according to government, people in Europe, they cannot even find bread in supermarkets, right?
That's
also the discourse. But I mean, going back to the political climate, I mean, I would like to say a few words totally parallel to what you have been describing. I mean, on the one hand, there's nothing new under the sun. There is polarization in Turkey, and such a polarization has always been working in favor of the government. And this is also partially about it, this us versus them narrative, to keep your side strong and united. And one of the fundamental elements of this narrative is the opposition is against religion argument. And Gülşen's joke fits perfectly in this narrative. That's why probably some opposition parties were a bit hesitant or shy to raise the issue to start with. So they describe it like the opposition, are attacking religion, and the AKP is defending them. We are here to defend you, so just come and support us. And there's also more to it. I mean, AKP is losing ground. All credible opinion polls are showing this too. And opposition seems to have a good chance in the next elections in June 2023. And the government really needs to consolidate its voters and reach out and convince the undecided voters. And ultra-conservative groups are also seeing this very well. I mean, they're not very big in terms of numbers, to be honest. But they know very well that even 1 or 2% is extremely important nowadays in Turkish politics. And they play their cards very well. That's why probably they are quite strong nowadays, and they put a lot of pressure on the government. There are also alternatives in the opposition. There are small Islamist parties, and these ultra-conservative groups may also claim that, I mean, if you don't do what we like, then we can also support the others. That's also why we see lots of signs regarding their increasing power and all these festivals. I think that's part of this story, and all these very ultra conservative elements. And in your daily show, you have a part about Sharia fast, actually, and every day you give some examples about it. I think it's very useful to understand this dynamic. And in the last few months, yes, those festivals were canceled. sometimes by finding excuses, and sometimes they didn't even bother, I think, to find an excuse. And those ultra-conservative groups, they are proud of this. They are actively lobbying for this. They are visibly saying that we are behind this and we want an Islamist society. We don't want all these people freely singing, drinking. So that's the main element. And one final element to understand the political dynamics behind the Gülşen case is, as you said, the LGBT issue. I mean, it's very actively used nowadays by the government. There is an increasingly anti-LGBT discourse. On the one hand, yes, this also has an ultra-conservative dimension. On the other hand, it has also this populist dimension. I mean, just like in Hungary, I don't know, Poland, Russia, we see actually very similar discourses there. So Turkey is not any different in the sense. But as you said, I mean, one issue I think we should probably discuss also about opposition. Okay, we are criticizing the government in terms of the understanding of freedom of speech, but it's not always totally bright for the opposition side either. What do you think about the opposition's understanding of freedom of speech?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, let's talk about the opposition. We have actually in other episodes of Talk Turkey talked about the opposition a lot. So opposition is not one entity. There are different wings in the opposition, the centrist or center-left CHP, center-right E party, but also there is Saadet Partisi, which is an Islamist party, clear-cut Islamist. They are also against LGBTI rights, and they think the LGBTI people are, so sorry to say this, but perverse. They are here to they are trying to, with the lobbies, destroy the Turkish family and this and that. So they are a part of the opposition also. Maybe this is why we cannot see a clear-cut stance against such cases in Turkey from the opposition parties. Probably CHP, the center-left party, a lot of CHP members and MPs, they're totally against such rulings and they are aware of what's happening, but they don't want to piss off their Saadet Partisi partner maybe. So that's why they're trying to keep a low profile. And is this a right strategy? I don't know. Let's look at the latest polls, if you like, to have an idea. This is Araya, for example, one of the polling companies. It shows AK Party, while the silver one is the total voters, and the golden one is basically with the undecided and everything. So AK Party is around 30%, which shows us a decline from 2018 when we had the last election. Back then, AK Party was around 40% and this and that, so they're losing nearly 10%. CHP 28%, so CHP is on the rise, but the most rise is with E Party. We see E Party is 14.6%. E Party,
some polls are even showing E Party like 18-20%.
Yeah, higher. The center right. Well, we are seeing a shift from AK Party to E Party, like more centrist voters, center-right voters apparently shifting to E Party, because E Party was like barely passing the threshold, which is 10% in Turkey in last election. HDP 10%, they are the same. They're they still have their own voters. MHP is on the fall. This is the government ally, 7.5%. There's DEVA and the other ones. These are relatively newer parties. So, but this is one case, and here's the other case. This is a Metropol, another polling company, basically. As you see, AK Party with the undecided is around 33%, and the CHP is around 23.4%. So Metropol is a little pessimistic towards the opposition, but definitely, from which perspective you take, there is a decline with the AK Party. And I've been talking to AK Party people. What they believe in is they believe in the upcoming election in 2023, they believe they might lose the majority in the Turkish parliament, but they believe Erdogan will win the presidency again, no matter what. However, people in AK Party, they are also disturbed by such developments. But they say, you know what, no matter what, still people, a lot of people, the majority, they love Erdogan. They believe in Erdogan. They trust Erdogan, and they don't see the light in the opposition. So at the end of the day, they're still going to vote for Erdogan. But they believe they might lose the parliament. That's their perception. That's how they see the political climate in Turkey right now.
Probably they also want to believe that Erdogan is going to win, because they cannot even imagine the alternative scenario, what would happen to them. So that's also, I think, explaining a lot, because when we see also the polls about the presidential elections, actually, but the top 3 or 4 candidates in the opposition, because we don't know who is going to be running against Erdogan, but we see 10-15% difference between Erdogan and potential candidate in the opposition. So I think opposition has actually a good perspective in terms of presidential elections too. So yes, this, I guess, partially explains why also the government side is trying to reach out to different groups, including the ultra-conservative ones, and also trying to bring this polarization again to consolidate the voters, and showing that, and they will be, I think, trying this message in a very strong way, that the opposition is anti-religion. And you have, to the conservative part of society, the message is that thanks to AKP, you have really improved your conditions in terms of your fundamental rights, in terms of your economic rights. Even the second part is a bit questionable nowadays because of the financial crisis. But still, the message is for the conservative voters that either you support AKP or you're going to lose all those gains in the last 20 years, basically. So this is the main message. But when it comes to opposition and the issue of freedom of speech, I think we should also note one more issue. I mean, one side is about this, yes, the opposition is quite diverse, but also in terms of understanding of freedom of expression, there's an issue in many groups in Turkey, in the opposition as well. I mean, all groups have their own values, like untouchable issues. And when you say something barely offensive about them, they get very easily offended. And they want the worst punishment for you. I mean, as you said, this is not, of course, not only an issue in Turkey. We have this cancel culture. We see it in the West too, especially in the US. But there are suddenly too many taboos. You cannot talk about certain issues. You cannot make jokes about certain topics. And in my opinion, this is a serious issue, and we should get more relaxed and less politically correct. People are too easily offended, and they expect legal consequences when they're offended. This is a big issue also in terms of liberalism. But of course, once again, we should note that there's a big difference between pro-government and opposition circles. If you're in the opposition and if you get offended, tough luck. I mean, anything can happen to you as an offender, but not much would happen. I mean, not much would happen if a person in the pro-government side is offended. Sorry, just the contrary, actually. If the opposition side is offended, then a lot is happening. If the pro-government side is offended, then you will face the consequences, including legal consequences like Gülşen. So there's this double standard, even in terms of getting offended, that we should understand.
True, double standard about getting offended. I mean, President of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan, made a speech the other day, I mean, last month, and he was criticizing people who joined Gezi protests back then. You know, it's a benchmark in Turkey. And he called everyone who joined that protest sluts, basically, like in a public speech. I mean, you know, if this is how you interpret law in Turkey, if this is the case, you know, I make a joke and I go to prison. So then this must be for the president also. No, I mean, I'm not saying Mr. President has to be tried for this, for calling people sluts. He should not say this ethically, but he's such a president. So, I mean, as you said, how people understand and perceive freedom of speech in Turkey is very, very narrow, actually. The judicial system also, you know, there is the clause, there is the law, but this is how law works, basically. You can have an interpretation with a narrow perception about freedom of speech, or a wider perception of the freedom of speech. So this is how the public opinion in Turkey and also the judicial system work. They have a very, very narrow opinion. They're like, yeah, what is freedom of speech and what is insulting people? Okay, I understand sometimes there's a thin line, but the judicial process should be basically supporting freedom of speech. So it should be the freedom of speech coming first. The freedom of speech should be protected. And also, I mean, the values, the democratic values and liberal values are not really yet still intertwined within the Turkish public still, you know. Turkey has a long way to go. I mean, if there is going to be a post-AK Party period, I think we need a social rehabilitation process. And then we have to start discussing what really our democratic values are, and how we should start living with the democratic values, and how we should just understand them and implement them. Totally. I mean, I agree with you.
And there is also, I think, a serious issue of self-censorship, because so many people, they understand that they are at risk if they really speak up their mind. So rather than saying what they think, they say things in a softer way, or they stay silent. So that's also a major issue in terms of democracy to be discussed.
It is.
Probably in the future.
Sure. Let me give one more example. I mean, we've been talking about Gülşen. Okay, she looks really good and everything. But there's also this scientist, Celal Şengör. He appears usually on TV screens, and he has a different perception of the world anyways. He used a very sexist language and this and that most of the time. Let me note that. But then he said something like, he said Moses probably did not exist, and Abraham, he was just a fairy tale figure. He basically said, yeah, these religious figures that people believe in, they probably did not exist historically.
But he's also a very prominent atheist figure in Turkey, maybe just
yeah. But then he's also called for interrogation. He's going to testify to the police because he insulted religious values. I mean,
yeah.
what the heck, right? Yeah. So, I mean, this is a Sharia fest in a sense. This would happen in Iran or in Pakistan. I mean, he's just speaking.
Yeah, but again with double standards. I mean, for one part of the society, as I said, it's like freedom of speech equal to Norway or even more, and the other part of the society is equal to Iran or Russia. I mean, so yeah, there's a big gap. Totally. If you're on the wrong side, tough luck.
Exactly. If you're on the wrong side, tough luck. Yeah. So we're wrapping it up with Gülşen and Celal Şengör in the end. This was the top agenda in Turkey.
Who would imagine that we will talk about Gülşen and Professor Şengör in the same episode? Well, let's see what other interesting issues will come up in the next episode.
Exactly. Wait for the next episode. See ya.
See ya.